I am very happy tonight to introduce John Crisano from the Office of the Arts, just part of the Department of Economic and Community Development, and it's thanks to John that we got this creative placemaking project started. So, I'm glad he's here tonight. He'll get the first ideas of the things that we'll be developing in these workshops all fall. And Peter Minuti is going to begin the evening and talking about Riverside Park. And then Art Costa and Jerry Cinnamon will give us an update on Hodges Square and how ideas for that is developing. And Brian Kent will update us on landscaping ideas. Over next to the cookies is a yellow sheet that lists all of the workshops that we're planning this spring, so you can mark your calendars and plan to continue to be an important part of the process here. And one more thing, I hope we can all march in the St. Patrick's Day Parade, wearing our T-shirts, the Riverside Art T-shirts. And I know that the Conservancy is also going to be getting a group together, and we're going to have a float. So we'll try to all march together as one group from Riverside Park, Hodges Square neighborhood.
Cedar, is that on the 17th?
Pardon?
Is that going to be on the 17th?
It's going to be on St. Patrick's Day, and if you sign up for it, Warren is going to be moving around trying to get names to sign up.
Just looking for an outlet.
You can do it after, a little later, but if you want to march, let us know, and then we'll get it all organized. But I hope we can have a nice group representing this neighborhood in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. John, did you want to say anything?
Oh, I'm just happy to take it all in tonight. You guys have done all the work. I want to hear about it.
Okay. Then, Peter?
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. I've seen most of you over the last 2.5 years. I've been working on projects in London for that long. How many people came to the Reconnect in London workshop in the summer of 2010? 2 or 3, 4. So I'm going to say a few words about that, and then we're going to kind of work our way in. The public process, start with that, work our way into recommendations, some hard recommendations from UConn through myself to Riverside Park. That's ultimately where we're going tonight. I want to give you a little background first on how we got to where we are tonight. The public process, we all know any development now has to be done with the public in mind and with the public input. The idea of experts coming into a community and telling people what to do does not work. We saw that through the 70s and 80s and really into the 90s. We now work with the community, understand what they're about, and take that as inspiration and guidance as we go forward. This project, this is Route 95 here. We're right up here, adjacent to Riverside Park, Coast Guard Academy here. Norm Garrick, a colleague of mine at UConn, a transportation engineer, it was his idea, along with Art, to kind of review and potentially reconfigure this nasty mess of interchanges on the highways. So I was part of that team, and we had a 3-day charrette working with the community, doing some solutions overnight, presenting it back to the audience. And this is just taking all these roadways and highlighting it in orange. And if you live here, you might get used to it, but most people get lost every time you get through that series spaghetti. And this land here, this gray land, which is kind of encapsulated or caught up in the highways, is 116 acres. Wow. Most of that land is not used for anything but space with these high-speed interchanges. So working with Norm Garrick and others, this is the proposal we came up with. So a lot of the roads could be removed and reduced in size, and then all this green area could be given back to the community. So there was a river that was buried for Route 95. There was wetlands that were taken away, forests that were taken away. We'd like to give those back to you, as well as land for development. So that was the idea of this this project. I think in some ways, Sandy, this was the impetus for what we're doing tonight. It happened 2.5 years ago. This project, the summary, 3 major points that came out of it. One was the city can begin to look at reorganizing the interchange. The reason for this is the DOT and the Federal Highway Administration back 50s and 60s had this idea that you could go from 95 onto 32 and not slow down. So Route 32, you could maintain a speed of 60, 65 miles per hour. So these high-speed interchanges would allow you to do that. Well, we all realize Route 32, you can't go 65, 60 miles per hour on, and the FDA, the Federal Highway Administration, gave up this idea. But we're left with the remnants of these interchanges. So a different policy now, and a different attitude, construct, transportation engineering allowed for that change. So recommendation 1 is to start to reorganize those streets. Number 2, take the vacant land and bring it back to the community for a tax base. And 3, saying that there's a lot of open space that could be reorganized, restructured, and utilized into some sort of system. And that's pretty much what I'm talking about tonight. So that was 2.5 years ago. The second project there is Riverside Park. And after we all worked on that big project, I spun off with a couple of grad students, a professor at UConn, and we did a more in-depth study of Riverside Park as part of that initial project. There's no reimbursement for us working in the community. Sometimes we get some money, sometimes we don't. Norm brought me in on this because it was such an exciting idea, and that was the same with this piece of work. And I thought this was a great picture taken by my grad student. It's a beautiful river, and you're looking through a chain link fence. So that kind of epitomizes Riverside Park, an amazing amenity that we can't even get to it. We're not allowed to get to it. So I'm just going to show highlights of the report. Talk a lot about ecology and the idea of the interaction of living things with their environment. And what we want to do is have high circuitry and connectivity of spaces. The more connectivity and circuitry, the healthier it is for all living things, flora, fauna, and people. And for whatever reason, New London is fragmented. 95 fragmented, Amtrak trains fragmented it, river fragmented it. There's a lot of barriers to overcome in this city. So this is just a quick little simple diagram from bad to good, showing these could either be 5 parts of a park or 5 parts of the city. Green areas. This one has no connectivity and no circuitry, so they're just isolated patches of ecosystem. Then this is starting to say limited connectivity. Some of them are connected, not all of them, and there's no circuitry to it. There's not a series of options if you're in that system. And as we keep going down, we get to full connectivity, full circuitry here, and this is the healthiest for all living things. People, animals, and plants. There's been plenty of scientific studies on this, as well as social sciences discussing this issue. And what we did is we said, okay, well, let's kind of take a look at that. And here's Riverside Park. Here's the old mill, which is just sad, right? What's happened to that old mill. It's amazing the work that's been done on the site itself and the building itself, but it's just trapped in the middle of the highway. It's very helpful. This is the boat launch, and this is down by the cove. And we're saying, you know, even here, we have all this we have these 4 fragmented pieces of nature. And then we started coming up with some attitudes on how these can be connected. So we have them. And Adelaide Street, we identified as a perfect opportunity to have that a complete street, which is a new kind of attitude with roadways now. Instead of roadways just taking care of the cars, we want complete streets. Good for the cars, good for people on bicycles, good for the pedestrians, good for everybody. So this is a great candidate for a complete street and begin to do some linkages. And then this is the summary, and this talks about this whole idea of continuity, connectedness, and the Project for Public Spaces talks about 9 steps in creating great waterfronts, and it talks about options, it talks about linkages, it talks about many different uses. You don't want to have a single use and just appeal to one sort of person. You want numerous uses so you get different people in different parts of the city at different times. So this is kind of the inspiration of the work we've been doing as we go forward. Thirdly, and also in this work, there was public input along the whole way. So again, we weren't coming and saying, hey, we have a solution, we're really good, we have a solution. We were listening to people having charrettes as we went through this. I'm going to turn it over to my grad student, Madeline. She's going to talk about these 2 projects as well. So these were 2010, and now we have 2 at 2012. Madeline?
All right, I'm going to talk about some of the events that have taken place over the past 6 or 7 months. And I'm going to start with the art jams, which many of you are probably familiar with. They took place between July and September 2012. There were 6 events held in the park itself, and they were oriented towards the arts to get people to use the park. And the final event ended with a walk through the park to discuss design ideas. And Peter and I were a part of that one. These are some images of the art jams. This is in July. Another one from August. Another one from August. And this is our group walking through the park, discussing ideas.
Very often as landscape architects or planners, we don't get to see people interact with the environment. So coming to these art jams was very useful just to see the use patterns, where people went on rainy days, where people went when there was a bigger crowd, where they congregated. So it was a great opportunity for us just to observe the use of the park that we were going to help design.
We had a workshop in September to discuss design and ideas for the park. And at this workshop, the attendees were broken up into 5 groups, and we gave them a kit of parts, which is basically different elements that they could place on an aerial image of the park. And they didn't have to use all the elements that we provided. We gave them things like a soccer field, parking areas, zip lines, things like that. And they could add notes and basically come up with their ideas for the park. These are the groups working. And these are some of their plans.
So the Thames River is down here. Here's the school, the historic entry into the park here, and then the aerial of the park. And these little pieces of acetate are color-coded based on type of uses.
In this case, the orange is parking areas.
So that was Team A. This was, they named themselves. This team named themselves the Knuckleheads. This is a proposed amphitheater. And evidently there was an amphitheater here historically down in this area. One thing we've lost, you've lost, are the views to the river, because the park has become so overgrown. You know, it's sloped so much. During the growing season, you're always looking into a canopy of trees, where many years ago it was primarily cleared. So you have this hillside sloping down with a beautiful vista of the river. This was the Dreamer team. Madeline, anything you want to say about this?
This team proposed a zip line coming from the school down to the waterfront.
So a zip line, you know, it's just something, a cable and trees, you hang on to it, you get into a saddle and you zoom down. Try to take advantage of the topography, right? We have the gravity, let's use it.
They also proposed to use this city-owned space for a community garden.
After that big snowstorm, I was thinking, man, if we had a sledding hill in Riverside Park, man, that would be just, it'd be perfect for it.
And the red pieces of acetate, those were pieces of what we would call an adventure playground scattered throughout the park. An adventure playground.
We're going to have a little more detail about that, a couple slides. This is the team. So they also did writing on this. So they're all coming up with their ideas.
This is a summary of kind of compiling all the different ideas from the teams.
So we took their 5 projects, Madeline summarized them, and then put the uses with the numbers, how many times it showed up in that location.
This is a matrix of all the ideas, and this helps see some of the commonalities between the teams, such as pedestrian and biking trails. That was a popular choice. And pedestrian crossing at the end of Adelaide Street to cross the railroad and access the river, as well as opening up the sightlines to the waterfront through the vegetation.
And also the soccer field. We didn't think a soccer field would be appropriate given the lay of the land, but you don't know what people around here want. Nobody wanted a soccer field. They realized when they tried to put it down, they said, this soccer field is too big. And they said, no, the park's too small. That's the size of the soccer field is. We can't change that, right? We have a multi-purpose field, but this is the size of a soccer field. And even people that came into the meeting feeling, hey, why not active recreation like soccer, realized this is just not the site for that. It's just not the right size.
And then the next workshop was the November 28th workshop. And on this one, the audience was presented with imagery of different playground categories, and we handed out a poll and kind of basically asking what their preference was, what type they would like to see within the park. And we also showed imagery of creative stormwater management techniques.
After the first workshop, the whole idea of a playground was a hot topic, so we wanted to kind of delve a little bit deeper into that, and that was the reason for asking about playground types. And also the stormwater, evidently a lot of the stormwater on this site drains through a catch basin that doesn't work. So the water just flows into the catch basin, overflows, kind of like a fountain, but not very aesthetically pleasing, and then just sheet flows through the roads. So a couple people came up to us and said, do you think there's any opportunity to take the stormwater that's just sheeting across the city roads and treat it in the park? And we love the idea. So best management practices, get the stormwater out of culverts, get them out of pipes, and have sheet flow across that park. We feel we could get that done. It would take some work, but we can get it done. The problem is, the park, the high point of the park is higher than the parking lot. So does anyone have an idea on how we can get all the water that falls on this parking lot up 15 feet to get into the park so we can treat it? That's our problem. So Madeline will talk a little bit about it. Once it's there, we feel pretty good that we can take care of it. We can't get it in there.
Peter, quick comment.
Yeah.
Working with the Thames River Basin Partnership, Eric Thomas is the watershed guy for DEP.
Yeah.
Also recommended the same thing, that it be viewed as a riparian buffer.
Right, beautiful. Yeah, I've worked with Eric a little bit. Excellent. All right, Madeline?
We presented these different categories of playgrounds: conventional, natural, adventure, sculptural, and educational. And this was the poll that we handed out, basically to get a sense of what people liked and didn't like.
So I don't like, we need this, not in this park.
These are the results of the poll. So the yellow is what people did like, and orange they didn't like. So you can see that the adventure playground for the left was pretty popular, as well as the natural, and the conventional plastic playground wasn't as popular. the educational people liked it, but they weren't sure that we needed it in the Riverside area.
So what were the two most popular?
Adventure.
Adventure and natural?
Adventure, natural, and then sculptural had some votes too.
Thank you.
And then conventional here is quite low as far as, this is I don't like and not in this park. So these are two negatives and these are two positives.
So are we looking at just one playground for the entire park, or are we looking for like say Central Park has many playgrounds,
Right.
and obviously this isn't Central
Right.
Park, but
But similar concept to Central Park in some ways. I think there can be definitely with adventure playgrounds, they tend to be decentralized. So it's not just one thing, and that's part of the adventure of it. If you have one child that is shows great leadership and they may be dominating the playground, people can go to other playgrounds. So I think numerous spots is what we're looking for here. Some playground types are more conducive to have numerous locations in other playground types. We can talk about that later on.
how many people were polled for this?
This is 12, right? So that's 12 for one. Sandy, do you remember how many people were at the meeting?
I thought we had more than 12.
Yeah,
I
we did.
thought we had
Oh,
about
yeah.
30 people.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did, yeah.
So there were about 30 people here. Yeah, 12 meaning the most. So this got 11 votes was the most votes. So it was around 30 people. Okay, and then
So these are examples of the categories that we're talking about. This would be a conventional plastic playground. This is at Ocean Beach. Natural playground. And the adventure playground.
That looks like fun.
a lot of people felt this just seemed like the character of Riverside Park when they saw it. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Great.
I see.
Right? And then
These are some of the creative stormwater management techniques that we showed.
So one of the concepts behind this is a project that I believe it's Portland, is that you expose the water. So instead of hiding the water, you expose the water, let people see it, and see what happens to it. So this is water coming off a downspout, coming down a little canal, coming across a piece of metal, coming down into this basin, and below it percolates down to the water table.
We didn't do a formal poll to see what people thought, but generally the perception was that they liked these techniques.
What's interesting, the park still has runnels, old runnels, like gutters, curbs. What do the Greeks Roman? What do they call those?
Oh.
Just little indentations to
Yeah.
carry the
They
water.
must have been used as water
Yeah,
drainage.
right. So people are starting to uncover these in the park. So we tie into those when possible. This is great children's rain garden here. And the water comes in and fills this up so the kids can see it, out there with their raincoats on, seeing it fill up with 2 feet of water, and then over a day or two, it go back and be dry again.
Huh.
Okay, so what we just talked about is the public process we've gone through over the last 2.5 years to get where we are tonight. Tonight's not going to be interactive. It's not going to be a work session tonight. It's the first time we've really had hard recommendations for you guys. This is site analysis of the park, and again, working with the public, we can have a better sense of the strengths and weaknesses of the park. What are the opportunities? There's a lot of writing on this. I know this piece of land pretty well by now. But we have a high point here, a low point at the river. Obviously, the river's a amenity, positive feature. Not being able to get to the river is a constraint. Can't get to the river, partially because there are railroad tracks there. There used to be a pedestrian bridge over the tracks. There's some different there, so we can't go over there now. So we really would like to be able to get to the river, and that's a long-range plan. We're not looking at doing that over the next year or two, but there's plenty of things to do before that. When you have a public park, you like active edges. The more activity on the side of a public park, public land, the more energy, the more critical mass, the safer it is. So if you look at the four sides of this, you have the Coast Guard Academy on one side. In ways, they're an excellent neighbor to have. They have them in our town, in our city, but it's not an active edge when it comes to this. With national security, with a fence there, and there's not a penetration of uses there. The river, we love that, but that's not active now. And part of the south side with the factories, that's not active. So over 50% of the edges are not good for safety, for critical mass, for activity. The west is quite good. We have the Magnet School, which we're in now, which is a beautiful school, architecturally and also subject-wise. And this whole neighborhood is a great use to have adjacent to a park. People's backyards want to be in the park. There's a basketball court there, and that looks like it's well used. There's an area with some cookouts, a flat area, that looks well used. Most people feel, this used to be a motor campground. So it's probably post-World War II that people would come here for the weekend. They'd drive in here, pull out a tent, and camp on this area. And that's why there's so many roads in the park, right? Because it was a campground. You go to a campground now, it's just all bisected by roads. We feel there are too many roads in the park. It's just, the uses change. People are not camping there anymore with their cars. We have this remnant of this old land use. So what else? Adelaide, as we showed earlier, we view this as a significant corridor or axis within this part of the city, connecting the old mill to the river, with this hanging off the side of it. Anything else, Madeline? I covered them all? And then we just talk about the opportunities and the constraints there. Pretty much what I was just talking about. The topography can be viewed as an opportunity and a constraint. The gravity is great. But with the whole park sloped this way, the park feels very isolated. It feels very isolated. If it was flat or tilted this way and the city was looking into it, you wouldn't feel that isolation. So it works both ways. We all love trees. I'm a landscape architect. But quite honestly, I think there are too many trees in the park right now. It's just it's overgrown, right? New England can be like a jungle. Just trees will just keep coming in. So we love trees. Tremendous diversity in this park. But maybe there are too many trees. And then these are just some of the opportunities at school. And we really are looking at trying to make a much cleaner, straightforward connection between this school and the park. Right now, between here and there, we have a detention basin, we have a fence, and we have a steep slope. So basically the signal saying is we don't want you guys in the park. And that's silliness, because we do want them in the park. Here's the view of the mature trees, mix of evergreen deciduous. Here's the constraint of the railroad. This is from the illegal bridge that Noam Garrick and I went up and on to do our field research. It is in bad shape. The waterfront condition itself is it's underutilized. It's not maintained. I have a small fishing boat. I do a lot of fishing on the Thames River, and I've told this story before, but in the summer, around 9 or 10 o'clock, you'll see fires all along the river, up and down it, of people coming out fishing at night. So there'll be, a given night, 10, 15 fires of people, yeah, just up and down. It's quite amazing. The smell of the smoke is nice, and I'm trolling in my small boat, and I have all these fires starting the coast. Plenty of people come and fish on this. As we all know, at the end of Adelaide, the chain link fence has been cut out, so everyone goes through that fence. We know it's illegal, but that's what they're doing. But you're not going to get, a family of 5 with little kids and strollers going through a hole in the fence, right? So we have to formalize that relationship. The rock, you mentioned Central Park. I mean, this looks like Central Park. It's really neat. I like the idea of scraping away some of that soil and exposing more of the rock. It's just over years, that's just sedimentation, and organic matter has built it up, so there's a lot more rock there that can be expressed. Well, I don't know why these arrows slipped in here. I apologize for that. Those little details bother me. So, we're going to now talk about our recommendations. 3 categories: how to get into the park, how to move around the park, and what to do in the park, active and passive recreation. This is just showing the context of the park. Again, we've named the roads. This is the park itself here. This is the magnet school. We have some roads coming from the Coast Guard Academy that dead end. We have another road from Riverside Heights that sneaks into the park, on the top, back out. Right now, all these double lines are all roads. Most of them still passable by vehicle. So we can see this thing is really kind of chopped up, fragmented up with these roads. These are what we're calling the proposed gateways, portals, thresholds, whatever we want to talk about how to get into the park. Right now, it's quite confusing on how to get into the park. It's not inviting. You don't have a front door of this park that's saying, please come into this park. And partially because Adelaide, this was the main entry. And if you were coming in by vehicle, you had this fairly nice, circuitous road, short, but very picturesque coming in. Well, the whole use has changed now. People are not reading in a newspaper or saying, hey, let's go camping this weekend here. It's less of a regional draw. It will be more of a local draw. Not to say people from out of the city can come. So what we're saying is, this location here, Crystal and Adelaide, is a main entry to this, and we want to express the idea that this is a functional park to be entered into. And we also see the area just up the street here, on Grove Street, as another main entry. So we see those 2 main portals and entries into this park. There's other ways to get in, smaller roads here. They're kind of going through fairly quaint neighborhoods. We see those as the 2 major places to enter the park. We then have 3 more dots along Adelaide. One at the existing vehicular entry, one at an old vehicular entry. There's you can no longer enter here, but there's a gateway. You used to be able to enter here. And then also a vehicular entry down by the river with an old building here that were restaurants. Hoping to get renovated. So right now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the Riverside Park. I know security often comes in through this entry, works its way across the park, this way and out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ways into the. We're proposing 6 ways to into the park. This is where it changes a little bit. This is color coded based on the mode of entry. How are you getting into the park? Green in the center, orange on the outside, is auto, pedestrian, bicycle, so a car can get in as well as pedestrians. All green is pedestrian, and all orange is auto. So our recommendation is, obviously, the main gateway, you get in by auto, car, and bike. You come to this first left as you're coming down Adelaide. This is now auto. We're recommending turning this to pedestrian and bicycle only, no vehicle. We come down further, utilize this entry for the vehicle, and also the vehicle down here. You know, right now, even though you're looking for a chain link fence, if you could drive, you can't drive from here to here, it really hasn't been maintained. But if you drive down here, anyone, people with disabilities, elderly, can come down here, park the car, and have quite a nice view down here. So that's our recommendation here. From the school, we see primarily a pedestrian entry here with a vehicular off to this corner. You see this one is more service-oriented versus really attracting a lot of day users at that entry. So this is definitely a departure from how the park is functioning now. A question?
Sure, I was thinking the one that's all pedestrian,
Yep.
which is the present main entrance off Adelaide. Right?
Yep.
It's going around up the hill. No,
Oh, this one coming in.
Right, so that would be all pedestrian. I'm sorry, because I wasn't at all the...
Oh, that's okay. No, this is our recommendation.
And I thought, will people really use it? Because it's windy and it's a long trek.
Right.
So I'm wondering if it would get any much use.
Okay, we'll
Little
talk.
bicycles, though.
Yeah, the bicycles can use it. Well, we can get back and talk about it. Let me get some more information on it. So that's how you get into the park. Now, how do we move around the park? Can you guys see these graphics? It's a kind of small screen. So here's what we're saying. These are all existing roads shown here. This is showing all the existing roads. We're saying that this road here remains, but it's primarily pedestrian and bicycle. This road here is for vehicles. Anyone who wants to drive into the park can cut across the park like that. Anyone who wants to drive down Adelaide can drive down Adelaide. Anyone who wants to drive here and come here, turn around and come out, they can do that. So all that road, auto, and auto up here.
The main pedestrian should be Adelaide in your estimation.
The name of the combination of these two. Combination of these two. This is just take all. We're going to get to that. That's proposed. This is all the existing roads.
The good thing about it is the traffic isn't crossing the pedestrian route.
Exactly. We're trying to clean that up some. Now, this green, which we view, okay, this green that we're viewing is pedestrian and bike. We also see the ability of emergency vehicles to use that, and the police to use this. So now the police can drive through like this, drive like that. Now if this plan is accepted, police can do this. They can come down here, they can come here, and they can come up like that. So they haven't lost any flexibility to control this. But we know the police won't be around that often. Versus, if this is still used by everyone in autos, it really kind of changed the character of the park when cars are going through there all the time. These dashed black lines, we would see getting rid of this pavement here, getting rid of those roads. So, if we look at this in a little more detail, this is just an enlargement of it. So, all the roads are being represented here. We're talking about getting rid of those roads and then changing the use of some of these roads.
Could I just,
Yep.
you know, I'm going to say there are people, I live at the other end of Crystal Avenue.
Yep.
And I always walk up Riverside Heights and walk into the park that way. So now you're kind of eliminating that, and then I walk down that hill, and then down, and then out Adelaide.
Right.
So you're kind of eliminating that.
I'm not. It looks like I am. I'm just not telecasting this. I would see locals using it the same way. So this is exactly what it is now. Our proposal
Yeah, but you're
stays that.
taking away the down
Oh,
road.
these, oh yeah,
Yeah.
but wait until you see what we give you.
Yeah.
We're gonna give you something in their place.
All right.
Okay? All right.
It's the zip
Now,
line.
this is just what we call like the ground. So these are pieces of land, and these are all the existing roads. And you can see that we have like
Wow.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 8 pieces. And when you're up here, as we were on that final day of the art jam, and of course we know there were more cars coming in there than typical days, but when you're walking along this road, you're constantly looking over your shoulder, and you feel like you're a second-class citizen to the car. You have to get out of the way, even though the roads are quite wide. So my feeling is, the way it is now, the car has a presence everywhere in this park. If we want more people to come to it, that presence will get stronger. They can go everywhere. Understandably, it used to be a motor camp area. You wanted cars to be everywhere. That's how people made their money. This is the essence of the proposal, that this road here still has a presence to it, and this one here at that edge. The rest of it is turned over to the users of the park without the vehicle. And we still have safety of the police. They can still do what they've always done. So this is the recommendation that we have. Take away some of the roads in here. Just switch this over. Ultimately, this is about a 20-foot wide road. Ultimately, we see it going to 10-foot wide. So if instead of repaving it at 20, when it needs to be repaved, it could be actually, the new ones could be taken out and a new surface could be put in. Pervious surface versus impervious surface. So we say, by doing this, ultimately we're going to save the city a lot of money because we're going to take away a lot of this pavement. We don't need this pavement. And these are just some examples of how we can kind of mark this now and kind of talk about a change of use here, a change of construct in how we do this. And Madeline just collected some information. There's a lot of rails to trails around the state. I've worked on many. This was done by Dean Johnson, a colleague of mine and a friend. It's just a different feel to this. And we see that's the feel that Riverside Park could have and probably wants to have. We welcome people into it.
Peter, what do you call that kind of entryway?
I don't know what I would call that. Gateway, threshold. Anyone else? What would you call that entryway?
Pedestrian, because you can't drive a car through.
Absolutely, you can't drive through. These can actually go down and be removed. The best way to control traffic is to make people feel they're going to scratch their car or hurt their car. Then that way they won't go somewhere or they'll go very slowly. And most of these, if they're placed, I'm not sure if this is wide enough, but a lot of these are placed that most people look at and say, I can't drive in there. But the police know they can make it with a foot to spare, so they can just slip right in. But there are many techniques of just allowing certain vehicles in and not others. And this is Central Park, this whole idea of icons and signage. And we see this being quite visible and maybe a little bit dramatic, showing that there's biking here. Ultimately, they may be swimming here, there's fishing here, there's boating here. You can drop a kayak at the end of Adelaide. So we see really kind of celebrating these uses. I mean, it looks very similar to New London if we took away some of the skyline. And then thirdly, how to use the park. So we have got people in there now, we've separated the vehicular, kept the safety of the police, and now we're saying, okay, what's the big idea here? Well, the fact is, a lot of the pieces, the pieces that are still being used in the park, the basketball court, the kind of round picnic area, which is right there, a lot of these pieces are over there and they work well. So, Madeline's the one that said, if we just strike this line here, and this becomes the entry, so this is actually a school bus drop-off, and this is pedestrian down here. So it can all be handicap accessible by ramping it that way. And then coming down, this is all on grade. And then this one, it shows a bridge over the train tracks. But all of this is on grade. This is steep, so you have a switchback curve there. That would be the main spine, and we have most of the active recreational uses hanging off of this spine. This is just an enlargement of it. And these yellow things, 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them except for that one, are all existing sites where things were or still are in the park. So we're just saying we have a new way to organize them. Instead of being connected to all these roadways, we can strike a pedestrian line here, get people both psychologically and symbolically here, connected to the park with activity along the way. That's what I want to give you, right? Really some nice stuff there.
Thank you.
This circle, we just kind of struck a circle right around where there's that rock ledge, the cookouts there, and the benches. It fits right into that circle. And then this is a illustrative that Madeline did. This is a little earlier scheme, but it is showing pruning some trees, taking down some trees here. So when you're at the school, you see the river, and that's the kind of destination you go down to. And this is showing this, so I'm going to just back up here, back up again. So we're just going to show you the existing uses in these. So number one is the current parking area that we would say is in such a key location on that axis, on that major pedestrian way. Let's not put parking here, we can find parking further away. Let's turn that over to some other active use. The 2 is the existing basketball court that we say people are using it. It's in pretty good shape. Let's keep it. Number 3 is a formal playground here. We love the idea of turning that to an amphitheater. There's a nice slope in here. There's some more trees here. There's a view of the river being down there. 4 is the existing picnic area. 5 is a formal playscape. And 6 is where there's a structure, a shed structure there. The foundation is still there. So I think what Madeline did was pretty ingenious to take all these seemingly isolated events and organize them just on this one line. Very clean. It almost seems like it's just happened. And then here's some views of this. So in this case, this road would be a bike and pedestrian and emergency vehicles. And ultimately, instead of being 20 feet wide, 10 feet wide. The same with that road. Same with this leg. It comes up and around. This is where Madeline just put that like that perfect circle. It's almost already there. So this is like the heart of that line and activities. This is the heart of it, and it's already there. We don't have to do anything. Just don't ruin it. Take the cars away so it's safe to be there. This is a beautiful rock ledge up here that stays just the way it is. You can see, the road's coming down here. You'll have made a path coming down there. So we're just saying, let's put a nice circular path around this. It's a gem. And then Madeline will just talk briefly about the status of the stormwater, and then we'll open up to questions and comments. Madeline? Flip it to the next one.
Yeah, so Peter mentioned briefly about the stormwater issue at the Winthrop School, and my interpretation of what's happening is that this catch basin here and this catch basin here used to be connected with a storm pipe, and that pipe was damaged, and it's been removed and it hasn't been replaced. So you can switch things. And based on the architects and engineers' drawings, I determined that the purple water here, the water running off from the areas in purple is going to this catch basin, and the green area is currently going into the detention area here.
So the green's the top of the building, right? The roof of the building?
Yeah, the roof and some of this parking area back
A little
here.
bit of the parking is coming this way now.
So the runoff from here is basically entering the catch basin and filling it up and sheet flowing down Grove Street. And our idea is to direct all of the water from the site into Riverside Park by connecting, possibly, connecting a pipe to this catch basin and directing it that way. And as Peter mentioned, the challenge is that this elevation is about 123.75, and the elevation at the beginning of the park is about 140.
So 17 feet. Now, if we could get it up there, 123 is not very far into the park, because this is a steep slope. So we get it early enough in the park to treat it, so that's not the problem. The problem is 17 feet with all the rock that we know is underground there. So we're looking at ways that we might be able to get the water in there. And then, questions, comments? Yep.
The entrance at Adelaide that you showed early in the beginning with the green and orange circles,
Yes.
cars would go in there, but where would they go? Because the road
Right.
is pedestrian from that point.
They would go straight. They would go down Adelaide,
Oh,
and then halfway down Adelaide, there's an existing overgrown
right.
existing
Okay.
road into the park. So they could take a left halfway down, or they can continue down to the river and take a left there to where the restrooms used to be, and we hope they'll be functional
So they
again.
wouldn't be actually going into the park at that first entrance?
That's right.
Yeah.
We're saying, let's not put the cars there, it's not very wide. There's really not a tremendous benefit in getting cars up there. Let's turn that back over to pedestrians and other uses. That's the idea.
So there would be no way for, say, elderly people that can't get out of their car, that just want to take a ride through the park to actually have a circuitous route through the park.
They have this move.
They can cut across the center.
Yeah, they cut across the center, they can come down here.
Right. But they can't
We're
drive
giving-
around the park.
We're the proposal is to give this up for the vehicle.
So that this all, what you're calling a spine, will
Yes.
no longer be accessible to vehicle traffic.
That's right, this is all on foot. You have a crossing here, and then they're adjacent there.
Where would parking
There's plenty of opportunity for parking here.
Right now, there's these two sections, we would maybe keep those, and then down here, we would keep that.
You know, with the width of the road, we could right now just restripe it or stripe it 20 feet, 22 feet wide, 10 foot of travel, and 8-foot parallel parking. So this excess amount of pavement, the number of parking spaces is not an issue. We'll do a count, but we'll probably take whatever was there before and add 50% more with this new configuration. Yep.
FYI, there's a group called Southern New England Paddlers, and I'm intrigued by the picture of the campfires on the beaches on the side of the river. And I'm wondering if there's some way we can't bring that together. We can use the state boat launch for the launching area. And also, I talked to Eastern Mountain Sports at one time, and I think that they will probably make kayaks available one day a week for free, just to get people, you know, as a sales promotional item.
Right.
And they would probably bring them down to the boat launch for us.
Great. Great. Other comments? Questions? Yeah.
I see where the amphitheater is,
Yep.
and I must have missed in the plans. Where are you looking at rebuilding the pavilion, and where, back to the slides about the playscape and what people's choices were, where would those be? Would they be off to the left there?
Right. Yeah, we haven't tried to have all the answers tonight. We wanted to see what people felt about the basic structure of the circulation, the basic idea of this, before we get into a lot of detail. But we would definitely see the basketball court staying. We would can see this picnic area staying here. And then the others, I kind of view as up for grabs. What would be proposed? What would people like to see? With this new configuration, when I first started working on this project, I said, oh yeah, this should be the more natural area deep in, and this should be the more used area. But once you get to know the park, it's really the flip of that, which is counterintuitive, because there's houses here and stuff. But this has the chance of being a little bit more wilderness. So adventure playgrounds could easily be dispersed in here. I think if we went with a more centralized, bigger, bright colored playground, I think we'd be out of place in here. I think it would hurt the overall imagery of this. I think if you had that near the beginning, people are just going to tune out another playground versus like this is a chance of being something else. With that being said, I think if people wanted one of those playgrounds in one of these, fine.
How about on number 5, where the playground was originally?
Right.
I think that's the perfect location.
Right.
We have one sitting idle.
I've heard that. So my feeling is we have a structure here. That's sort of playground over here. To me, we might enhance the plan. The idea of it going on somewhere in here, to me, it makes sense. Yep.
There have been people who have talked about the possibility of community gardens or children's gardens. Where would you envision that in one of the more active parts or the more wild areas?
I would love to see if there's a need for that use. I couldn't think of a better gateway use than community gardens, because it sends the message that this is not for derelict behavior. This is for the community, and people are policing it. Eyes on the street. That if people feel there's a need for that, by God, that'd be fantastic. And I'd like to see it on both sides of the road here. So people coming through the garden, entering the park, going through a garden, I think it would be a fantastic use for that. Again, a lot of sun there, right? Not a tremendous amount, but we have a house here, so right behind the house, there'd be some shade. But over here, a lot of sun. So I think it'd be a great location for it. And then I don't know if a farmer's market or something, that whole idea there, to reinvent into this, I think that'd be a great use.
Yeah. So we have several residents at 175 Crystal, so right next door to where you're talking about the community garden. They were very excited about those possibilities of something like a community garden there.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I didn't know if we could do a survey, go door to door, but man, that would I think that would be such a go-to. I don't know what the soil's like there. I don't know if it's an urban soil or decent soil, but it seems to me you don't need a tremendous amount of infrastructure for use like that.
Yeah, all the community gardens in London are already raised beds because the soil
Urban
is,
condition.
Yeah.
So you could design some sort of raised bed system in there. Yep. Yep.
Wouldn't you want parking to be more conveniently located to the picnic area where people hauling things for a picnic?
Remember that this what we're trying to say with this road is let's not have daily traffic coming through here all the time. But you know, special situations, dropping things off. The fact is most of this could be vehicular, could handle a car. So special occasions, you open up the gate, you bring stuff in, you can drop things off. So that's something that could be managed. I even said to Madeline, I think a lot of people buying smaller cars now. Why can't we let them come up here on special occasions? She said, you're pushing it there. But the idea of coming up here, getting onto this, going around here, coming up here, going on that all could be used by the vehicle. We see it just as a special situation. Emergency, dropping off, something like that.
Just a comment on that issue. In Bateswoods Park, we have the area that goes from the parking lot to the ball fields. There's a bollard in the middle that can be removed for access for any activities that require a vehicle. The same model would work here as well. It works pretty well with it.
Or you could even have like electric golf carts, and you could have the space wide enough for that to go through on a regular basis for security and for
yeah.
Control.
Sandy, maybe you could get yourself one, and you can just sit around the park and check it out.
That sounds like fun.
It does. Yep.
With regard to that poll that you took for at that meeting where different types of playscapes were requested, the natural playscape being the most popular one, I think it was.
Yep.
Recently, there was a meeting at the Parks and Recs, and also the local neighborhood watch group also had a meeting where it was said at that Parks and Recs meeting that a more natural playscape is what most of the neighbors in this area are looking for as well. So is that something that instead of that a plastic playscape, which everyone in that thinks that they weren't looking for,
right,
is that something that is better in this park than a regular old conventional plastic playscape?
Okay, so you're slyly getting me into this debate. Right.
Not very sly. We're pulling you in nonetheless.
I think, as I said earlier, from my perspective, the idea of that plastic playscape being tucked somewhere in here that supports the master plan, I personally don't have an issue with that.
Okay.
The overall imagery of the park, the majority of the play, the adventure playground seems like a natural fit. Now you have a playground that basically, seemingly is like free, right? It's already been bought. Those things are very expensive.
Oh, not technically free. It costs a lot of money to build.
How much?
20-something thousand.
Well, it said 57,000 to put it in there.
Yeah, but that was dismissed. That quote was dismissed.
I didn't hear that.
Yep.
Well, if just
in any event, both playgrounds could fit very nicely in the park. Plastic one at 5 or plastic, and it's, I mean, it would be terrible to trash a perfectly good, it's a waste of a playground, not very green.
right. Yeah, I guess if it's free, it's one thing. If you're going to say to me, if you're going to ask me my opinion, will you put $60,000, if that's the number, will you put $60,000 toward that playground for this location? I'd say I'd prefer $60,000 to be used for something else in this location. $60,000 can give us a lot of adventure playground, a lot of adventure playground. So it's one thing if it's coming in here free of charge. If it's costing that kind of money, I would really need to look at it in more detail from my perspective.
And also what the people want in the neighborhood and what have been polls that they've been.
Right, and I think another part of this is just the process. I think people have gone through this process, and some of these people have been working 2.5 years on this. I think there's some sense that it's being forced on them. And I think that would be a shame if this was forced into the parking location, given this process. I think working together, we can find an alternative location for it.
On a related note, the city's looking at some kind of related with sustainable forestry project. So in taking out the trees, where the trees are going to be coming out, what if we brought in a portable sawmill and actually cut the logs into usable wood and use that somewhere in the adventure playscape?
Love it. Can you do that for $60,000?
Actually, there's one company that's doing, actually I think they're doing work at the hospital grounds now that's actually paying for the privilege of coming in and cutting the trees and taking out the wood. I think
the size of the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? Yep.
I'm curious if you would just review the water access part of that again. Does this design has a pedestrian bridge in it?
This design tonight, we are not proposing bridges within this proposal. We've done some work with Cindy before. We actually did a small study. We didn't share with you tonight. We had a lot of other information. That we did an access study for the coast. Ultimately, we feel, at the end of Adelaide, at the end of this, would be the ideal places to cross the tracks. Whether it be a raised pedestrian bridge, which that's what the railroads will want, or an odd grade crossing. One or the other. These two locations seem to be the most reasonable places to go across. And Madeline has done a layout here showing a boardwalk, areas for fishing. At one of the presentations, two men came up to me and said, you know, I used to be a lifeguard down here. Every summer they had swimming lessons, and they had docks out there, and they were lifeguards. There's fond memories of how this was used at one time. The river's coming back, right? There's amazing fishing in that river. Some of the best fishing in New England in that river. I've never consumed any of the fish I've caught in the river, but tell me it's okay if you do. But it's coming back. It's a great, great fishing. Anything else? Yeah, Ryan.
I just want to weigh in on the playground issue, because a lot of numbers have been thrown around as far as what it would cost to do that. And I think the discrepancies have to do with the safety surface that would be installed under the playground, because the initial numbers dealt more with the labor to disassemble it, to move it, and reassemble it. The more current numbers have to do with hiring subcontractors and buying the expensive materials to install a state-of-the-art safety service, and that is very expensive. So the question is the cost benefit there for this type of safety service, or should there be something less expensive underneath the playground? Like your intuition about how that playground can fit within the master plan, I think, is sensible. It's also sensible from the point of view of very young children are typically watched by their parents or caregivers when they're at a playground. You don't typically send a 5-year-old loose in an adventure playground across a park like this. So the benefit of that kind of playground, it's compact, it can be surrounded by some sort of enclosure, and then, you know, very young children can use it. So I think for that age group, I think it possibly makes sense here. But the very expensive, you know, impact absorbing safety surface may not be practical in this context because it would be so expensive.
Right.
So I think that's, hopefully that clears some of that.
Brian, is there some accepted liability if you have a structure like that that allows people to get up fairly high and you don't have that safety cushioned mat underneath it?
Well, that could be the reason for the additional cost, and I'm not fully current on the requirements for public playgrounds. But if the city can only avoid liability by installing that kind of a playground, then that cost is mandatory.
That is not the case. The city can use pea gravel, the city can use wood chips. There are many different substrates that they can be used. Pea gravel, rubber, pelletized, all of the national playground overseers recommend a myriad of substrates, with the poured rubber being the top tier, and pea gravel, all of them being acceptable. Pea gravel at the bottom, rubber at the top, all 100% completely acceptable.
Great.
No, I would just, someone, I think Warren mentioned it, I've been talking to a lot of neighborhood people about the cat population, and I was told today there are probably at least 30 feral cats living in the area. There have been trap and release programs in place, but we have to be careful too that it's not, the playground isn't set someplace that would be attractive for cats to use as a cat box.
Yeah.
So that's just throwing out one other factor that might not have been mentioned.
Right. Yeah, hopefully with more nature, we'll have some foxes come in here, then we'll take care of that problem. I'm joking. Like that.
I just have a question about the adventure playgrounds, is the comment about if you have a younger child.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know exactly, I'm not perfectly schooled in it, I don't know what exactly falls under that category, but I do have younger kids.
Right.
Youngest is 3, and it seems to me also that looking at the pictures, like one of those that was under the category of adventure, it was just this little bridge with, you know, it was like a aesthetically pleasing, I think it integrated into the trees somehow, and so that those seem, and if you look at the nature also, they're kind of, as Bud was saying, kind of like fallen tree balance beam kind of situation. So those, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks as if those are perfectly accessible to younger kids as well. Like there's variety for different age groups.
That's true. That's absolutely true. I think what Brian, and Brian, you can say it as well, if you take, some people do like those plastic playgrounds, and they do like it with a fence around it, and they do like that control, and they would be used as for something like that. But young children be in adventure playgrounds. You design it for different age groups. And then when they feel comfortable moving up a little bit, they get up with the little bigger boys, get a little bit higher, the little bigger girls, get a little bit higher, and they work their way through it.
Actually, now that you're thinking about it, one of the ones that you showed was that kind of, I don't know if it's foamy kind of material that they put underneath playgrounds, but it's into like this hilly situation. So that is like absolutely like perfect for a toddler. Like that's falling over all the time. They're working on balance, and yet it's a different kind of surface that's safe. So
that was in that is in.
They have one of those in Manhattan in Central Park.
Yeah, they also have one in new one in Brooklyn Bridge Park. And I think that's where that one was from. Michael Van Valkenburg's office. We have 3 kids, alumni work in that office, and they showed us a tour of that. It's very, very expensive, but beautiful. Very functional.
Back to the watershed and the water quality, the Thames River Basin Partnership just got a huge award from Secretary Salazar on the Willimantic River, which 30 years ago was basically an open sewer. Now it's swimmable, fishable. Yep. And I would like to put the EPA has an adopted watershed program, and if anybody's interested in working with me, I would love to work on the lower Thames River.
Yeah, I think we're definitely looking for funding opportunities as we go forward.
Yep. How much rebuilding would be needed to make that straight line down? I mean, in terms of what we currently have there for the picnic area and so on.
Right.
I can't quite figure out how that fits into what's existing.
Right. Madeline has done a complete grading plan. So she's shown the cut and fill. We have the cut and fill. And it's extremely sensitive. Kind of lays right into the lay of the land. No blasting of rock. It's more or less following this area here. This area is the steepest. That's why we have this circular shape. So we pick up the grade there. And that's why we have this switch back here to pick up the grade, like skiing or something. So it's kind of hitting things where they are. So it would be relatively easy to do.
So it would be a huge project to
That's correct.
to put this in place.
Exactly. We don't see I see this as visionary, but I don't see it as pie in the sky. I think we've been in that park enough, and we see how people use it. We know where the desire lines are, so it just kind of laid right in there. Maybe the next meeting can bring a grading plan, and it shows the cubic yards of cut and fill, so we can talk about quantities of cut and fill to lay this in. Now, Madeline does have a grand stairway coming down here, so that can be quite expensive. You don't need it. It'd be nice. And I have an idea that, Versailles and some of these European gardens, their fountains were gravity fed, especially in Italy. So I'd like to have some really beautiful fountains on this thing. So after a big rainstorm, they're going up like 30 or 40 feet up in the air. And then when the rain stops, they go down. So it would be an event. Everyone would say, hey, we have to get down to the park. You see that rainstorm we just had? So that's a lot of gardens here function that way. Yeah.
Restrooms.
Restrooms.
I didn't see any.
In this one, we should have shown it. The hope is, and Cindy can talk more about this, that the existing restrooms will be renovated. So there'll be public restrooms down here.
The small spot.
Right here?
No.
Right by the staircase.
Right in the.
Where that?
Yeah, it's right there.
What type of restroom is that?
That's just a
restroom.
Concrete.
Concrete?
Block.
Yeah. Is it functioning?
No.
No, there is a small leak going into it, and there are plans to make that functioning before summer.
The wooden side is pretty.
Yeah, it has all this, the women's side has all these fixtures, it was just checked, there's a leak going into it.
Right.
Once that leak, well, is dealt with, it was discovered soon before the snow, so that kind of put things off schedule, but I don't think there's a problem with fixtures so much as it hasn't been used for so long, they just discovered the leaks in the system. I have another quick question. You acknowledge that that is a huge project. How easy would it be to accomplish in phases?
This?
Yeah.
I don't view that as a huge project.
Oh.
I don't view doing this as a huge project. You know, my feeling is if you have good functional design, it's going with the forces, with the flow of what's there. Now, if someone said, we want all cut stone, we want cut granite for all our steps, well then the price goes through the roof. If people say, let's cut down some trees and have trees lie down, then it's quite inexpensive to do. $60,000 can do a lot of that, cutting down trees and putting them in place. Now, trees being cut down will not last 200 years or 2,000 years, right? We have stuff in Europe that's been around for 2,000 years, cut stone. So that's where you can't fake materials. If you wanted expensive materials there, it'd be an expensive project. And that's one reason why kind of this move toward the adventure playgrounds, kind of taking into account the economy of the country, the economy of New London. You know, we have trees there. We want to take some trees down so we can have better views. Let's use the trees to create, adventure playgrounds, to create ramps, to create steps. So that was part of the thinking in this, is to go in that direction.
Did you take into account any of the brownstone block and reuse for the block in the park?
We haven't got to that point, but we want to. We'll take an inventory of that and see how we want to reuse it. Again, if at the end of tonight, if generally people can weigh in on some of the big moves we're proposing, and if generally people are acceptable, for the next meeting, we can go to the next level of detail in all of this area. So that would be at the next level, if we're ready to go there.
Peter, you got?
Yep.
Just to kind of play off Rana's point about community gardens.
Right.
Relatively inexpensive to implement, natural, and my observation of children is that they'll spend forever with dirt.
Right.
It's amazing what children can do when they're just allowed to play naturally.
Right.
And so that, thinking about a solution like that, that both integrates the community, brings the community together, provides some play as well, and fits into a natural setting and is low cost.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that might be entertained as kind of a low-hanging fruit on a project like this. Identifying where, put those beds in, those could be done even with logs.
Right.
But anyway, I just mentioned that because.
And that's the best teacher. That's the best teacher too. Is natural play. Just getting the kids outside playing in the dirt.
It was funny. Someone just told me the other day that for like their 5-year-old on his birthday, he had a dump truck come in and dump a pile of sand in the front yard, and the kid was just. He couldn't believe it was on the sand pile. Right?
He's the king of the neighborhood.
So, what do people think about some of these ideas? About the circulation, the auto, stuff like that? People are saying it makes sense to them?
I like 99% of it. The only issue.
Oh, no, that's okay. You can stop there.
Well,
bring up 1%.
The only issue I have is that elderly people may not be able to take a circuitous route around the park. They've got to come down here, they've got to back up, they've got to do a 3-point turn, they've got to go back out. Whereas now there are people driving through, older people that drive through the park and they actually drive through the park and then they go in and out. It's part of their daily or weekly routine.
Wayne, we are the 99%.
That's the 1%. There is the parks is, for everyone.
Could that be like a disability issue too?
It could.
For disabled people.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to eliminate one particular segment. I mean, I understand where you're going, and maybe road treatments could be different so that they're not, you know, impervious surface,
Right.
but still allow people to drive on them if they, I mean, I know where you're going and I know where you want to go. I'm just afraid that and I agree, I understand it. I'm just afraid that it eliminates some people's access to the park.
The good thing that he did point out is if people couldn't walk to the areas for the picnic area or whatever, that it would be possible to drop off. You know, drive up, drop your stuff off, and then go on.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm not talking about people. I mean, for the most part, you know, the elderly people aren't going to. The use that they're going to get out of the park is driving through and looking at the beauty of the park. They're not going to get out and probably not going to get out, depending upon their age, sit down and pick them.
This is definitely representing a kind of a shift in mentality.
I understand.
So
I get that.
Yeah, is accurate. Yeah.
Well, actually, both of what they're saying. And my take on it is actually that elderly people, if you extended the orange line from the circle up to the big circle, just so there was a handicap access.
Here?
Right, to the center. No, not the way.
Here.
The center one, right.
Some sort of
Right, well, where the existing road is now, if it just went up.
This would be orange.
Right.
Yep.
For handicapped access to the park, so people can't, with handicap can't picnic. I mean, because they do.
Right.
It's not like.
Absolutely. I think that be in the spirit of what we're trying to do here.
Right.
And say there's limited access to here.
I'm not saying that they need to make the whole drive through the park,
Right.
just to
Get
get
them up
to
to
that point.
The heart of what we're doing.
Right, and then from there they can go out and observe the other activities. I mean, they're not going to be going down on the switchbacks, probably, but they can get to the other active areas of the park.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
I think as we're moving toward the concepts of having maybe some scattered play areas instead of one central play area, we have to keep a larger area safe from automobiles, so kids can run from one activity down there to something else up by the park and then come in for a picnic. That whole area needs to be safe for kids to run around.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have too many cars running through it.
Yeah.
Somewhere safe for the children. Well, you know, we had a lot of kids tonight.
Old people are scary as
Yeah.
I have a question about the traffic.
Yes.
Adelaide is very small, and it's half of it's one way.
Yeah.
I live on Rosemary, that's small, and Grove, and we get a lot of traffic during the summertime anyways, and a lot of the sidewalks all beat up.
Right.
Lines falling apart halfway down. So this is going to increase it, so are they going to, and there's a lot of houses on, you know, you got to come down Terrace and then cut down on Adelaide.
Adelaide's not one way.
It's not one anymore?
It's been two-way for a year.
Oh, well, I don't go down there. I didn't know that part. But yeah, and they're all very small, so what's...
Yeah, well, that's one reason why we're saying we see Adelaide being where improvements need to be made to roads. This is where it would be done. Not in here. Let the traffic come on this road. We're not promoting traffic coming through here. If people circuitously get there, that's fine, but we're not promoting that. We're promoting people coming up here, parking at the school and walking into the park. There's already built-in parking. I didn't bring it up, but I do think some limited parking down here makes sense. If we're telling people you can't drive here anymore, the idea of people coming in here, parking, and then walking here, I think makes sense. So some limited parking down here, the trail, any trailhead has some limited parking. We see that happening there. Which is,
I'm sorry, but I understand the parking at the school, but the park during the day, the school is used. You know, the only time it's really free is during the summer, doesn't that? Summer and weekends, but
that's in some ways shared parks, and that works pretty well. You know, that's when most people are going to be using the park is summer and weekends. and the school's out. So we want to use shared parking as much as possible. So that's generally considered a good shared parking
You
scenario.
also talked about the middle driving road having a parallel parking along it.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
can drive
Plus-
in.
plus, yeah, in here's, we can have plenty of
Because
parking.
they're 20-foot roads.
Right.
Right.
There's a lot of pavement there.
No, that's appropriate.
Might it also make sense to separate the issue of access for whatever age and whatever condition people are in
Right.
from the automobile?
Right.
Because the automobile can be a dominating force as you have more and more cars come in. They can swarm the park just with parking. We know we never have enough parking.
Right.
So maybe separating and just thinking through access without necessarily, and accommodating some kind of perimeter parking or whatever. But that focus on the access and not so much on automobile is the only way to have access.
Right.
Might shift the thought process a
Right.
little bit.
Well, what I'm hearing tonight,
You've got
correct me if I'm
public
wrong.
transportation right there too, you know, the bus goes right by the park, so.
What I'm hearing is general support for the basic attitudes I'm putting here. Some percentage that, you know, let's take care of everyone here, we hear that, but the general idea makes sense to you guys. Okay. So we can move on, take into account the commentary. I think this is a logical move. Look in more detail about Adelaide, how wide is it now, how wide does it have to be for parking. We'll start to lay out some gardens and other uses up here. So we'll just kind of get to the next step in our development. And Sandy, we're gonna have another meeting on the park in about 6 weeks, right? 5 or 6 weeks.